Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. I was 22 when this happened. I had just graduated college and was between jobs doing odd work around town, babysitting, house cleaning, running errands, anything that paid cash. One day, a woman I sometimes dog sat for recommended me to a friend of her neighbors, a man named Craig. He called me and said he'd be traveling for a week and needed someone to stay at his house to look after his golden retriever, Max. He explained that Max was an anxious dog who did best when someone stayed overnight rather than just dropping by. The pay was a little more than I usually made, so I agreed. Craig met me 2 days later. He was in his late 40s, tall, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a windbreaker. Nothing about him seemed off, maybe a little too friendly, but not creepy. His house sat on the edge of town, tucked back in the woods. It was nice but dated. Beige carpets, floral curtains, the kind of place that felt frozen in time. Craig showed me where everything was. Max's food, the spare key, what I could use from the fridge, and told me I could stay in the guest bedroom on the first floor. I started the job on Monday. The first 2 nights were completely normal. I'd watch TV in the living room, take Max for his walk, then go to bed with him curled up at my feet. But the third night, that's when it went wrong. I was sitting on the bed scrolling my phone when I noticed something strange. On the dresser across from the bed was a digital alarm clock. It looked newer than everything else in the room. Black plastic, bright blue LED display. Something about it felt out of place. I leaned closer. Above the glowing numbers, I noticed a tiny, perfectly round hole. At first, I thought it was just a sensor, but the angle of it was pointed directly at the bed. My stomach dropped. I had read about hidden cameras disguised as alarm clocks before, but I had never seen one in real life. I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, and there was a faint humming sound inside like a tiny fan. I turned it toward me and stared right into the little black pinhole. That's when Max, who had been dozing by the door, suddenly sat up and whined. And then, somewhere deeper in the house, not the front door, but inside, I heard a door close. Every hair on my body stood up. Craig wasn't supposed to be home until Sunday. It was Wednesday night. Heart pounding, I set the clock back down, tiptoed to the door and locked it just as slow, deliberate footsteps started down the hallway. They stopped right outside my door. Then Craig's voice came through, calm but slightly out of breath. He said he had left something in the room and needed me to open the door. I stayed completely silent, my heart hammering. He kept talking. Said it wasn't what I thought, that the clock was a motion sensor for the dog, that he just hadn't wanted to freak me out by mentioning it. I backed away from the door, my hand over my mouth. When I didn't respond, his calm voice turned sharp. He started pounding on the door, yelling, telling me to open it. Max was barking wildly now, scratching at the door, which only seemed to make Craig more agitated. I looked at the window. It was low enough to climb out. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to unlock it. Behind me, Craig's pounding grew louder. He shouted that if I didn't open the door, he'd get the key, call the cops, and tell them I broke into his house. I didn't wait. I shoved the window open, climbed out, and dropped onto the grass. I ran down the gravel driveway until I reached the road, looking over my shoulder the entire way. My phone was in my pocket. I called my mom, told her to come get me right now. By the time she arrived 15 minutes later, I was hiding behind a cluster of mailboxes, shaking. I stayed at my mom's house that night. The next morning, I blocked Craig's number and spoke to a lawyer. He told me that without evidence, when there was a photo of the clock, a recording, there wasn't much I could do. If I accused Craig, it would be my word against his. I thought about going back for proof, but the idea of seeing him again made me sick to my stomach. I never got paid for the 3 nights I stayed there. The woman who recommended me to Craig stopped responding to my messages. For weeks afterward, I had nightmares about hidden cameras, about waking up to find someone standing silently in my room. And I still think about that moment, the sound of the door closing somewhere in that house, and the horrible possibility that Craig had been there the entire time, watching me through that little black lens, too. I booked the Airbnb in late September. about a week before my girlfriend Emma and I planned to visit her sister. It was a small town, 3 hours away, and the house seemed perfect. Cheap, cozy, close to her sister's place, and with great reviews. The listing showed an old 2-story home with a wraparound porch, warm yellow lighting, and hardwood floors that gave it a fairy tale charm. There was just one odd note in the description. Guests were told the basement storage room was off limits. I barely thought about it. Most hosts keep a locked closet or storage space. But when we pulled into the driveway just before sunset, the house looked more worn than the photos had suggested. Its paint was dull, the wood siding weathered. The place stood alone, surrounded by dark tree lines and a narrow road that seemed to vanish into the woods. And then there was Alan, the host. He was already standing on the porch waiting for us. Tall but slightly hunched, with thin gray hair combed carefully over his head. His flannel shirt was ironed crisp, tucked into clean jeans. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. When we shook hands, his gaze lingered a second too long. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and something sweet, almost like candle wax, though I didn't see any candles. The living room had a big couch and an old TV. The kitchen was dated but tidy. Upstairs, there was one bedroom with a ceiling fan and a dresser with a small mirror. Then Alan stopped by a door near the kitchen, a heavy padlock on it, and tapped it twice. "This stays locked," he said, his voice suddenly firmer, no smile on his face. "My storage space. No reason for you to go down there." It was just a little too commanding. After Alan left, Emma and I unpacked, made some tea and sat on the porch, letting the quiet settle over us. By bedtime, the silence was almost suffocating. No traffic, no voices, just crickets. Sometime after midnight, I heard a dull thud from below us. I froze, listened, but nothing followed. Probably the house settling, I told myself. The next day, we stayed out late, had lunch with Emma's sister, came back, made dinner, watched a movie. Around 2 a.m., I woke up and headed for the bathroom, but stopped cold halfway up the stairs. A dragging sound, something heavy scraping across the basement floor. It lasted 5 seconds, stopped, then started again. My first thought was that Alan had come back for something, but he'd told us he wouldn't be around. I stood there holding my breath until the sound stopped. When I told Emma, she said she'd heard it too. The second night was worse. Around 2:30 a.m., footsteps echoed from below. Slow, deliberate, 4 or 5 at a time, then a pause, then 3 more. Between each pause, I swear I could hear breathing. We lay there, stiff, listening until dawn. By the third day, the house felt different, heavy, like something in it was awake and waiting. During daylight, I checked the basement door. Still locked. But when I leaned close, I smelled it. Stale, sour air wafting through the cracks. That night, the sound started earlier. A faint metallic clink, clink, clink. Then the footsteps again, for nearly an hour. Emma barely spoke to me that evening. The fourth night, while brushing her hair, she suddenly froze and asked, "Does the smoke detector look weird to you?" I climbed on the bed to check. In the center of the detector was a tiny, shiny black dot. A camera. I yanked the detector down. Inside was a small battery-powered camera, its green light glowing. Emma's face went pale. I tore through the room and found another camera lens poking through a tiny hole near the dresser. Both pointed directly at the bed. We packed in silence, not even folding our clothes. We left in the middle of the night, drove to the nearest gas station, and called the police. 2 officers met us there. We told them everything, the noises, the cameras, the locked basement. They followed us back to the house. The front door was unlocked, and the basement door was now wide open. Pitch black inside. The officers went down first. Within minutes, we heard shouting. They called us down. There, in a closet in the basement, was Alan, hiding. Inside the closet was a monitor, apparently connected to the cameras upstairs. He was arrested on the spot for trespassing and invasion of privacy. The police seized the cameras, the monitor, and everything else they could find. Airbnb offered us a voucher, maybe hoping we wouldn't share what happened. We took it, but it didn't matter. We haven't stayed in an Airbnb since, and I don't think we ever will. Story No. 3. My name is Ryan, and this happened just last week. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Portland, Oregon, with my roommate Tyler. I didn't know him before moving in. We met through a Facebook housing group. He seemed normal enough when we first toured the place. Quiet, polite, a little awkward, but in a way that made me think, this guy will mind his own business. That was exactly what I wanted. For the first couple of months, things were fine. We had opposite schedules. I worked a standard 9-to-5 office job, and Tyler worked nights at a distribution warehouse. Most mornings when I left for work, his bedroom door was shut. At night, when I came home, he was usually gone. We'd cross paths maybe once or twice a week, exchange a few words in the kitchen, and go about our lives. But then I started noticing little things that didn't feel right. The first time it happened, I came home late and saw my closet door standing wide open. I always keep it shut. I figured maybe I had just been in a rush that morning and forgot. A few days later, I noticed my desk chair turned slightly toward my bed. I never leave it like that. Again, I brushed it off, but deep down, it made me uneasy, like someone had been in my room. Then one Saturday morning, while I was cleaning, I found something that turned my stomach. I was wiping down my shelves when I spotted something up in the corner where the wall meets the ceiling. It looked like a little black speck. I climbed onto a chair to get a closer look. My blood ran cold when I realized it wasn't just a mark. It was a tiny wireless camera aimed straight at my bed. My hands were shaking as I pulled it down. It had a slot for a memory card, but the card was missing. I just stood there staring at it, feeling sick. All I could think about were the nights I had been sleeping, changing clothes, even having private moments in this room, all while being recorded. The only person who could have done this was Tyler. He was the only one with access to my room. At that moment, he wasn't home. His door was shut. The apartment was silent. I stood there staring at his door, heart hammering. I told myself not to do it, but curiosity won. I slowly turned the knob and opened it. His room smelled musty, like dirty laundry and stale food. The blinds were closed, leaving the room dark even though it was the middle of the day. His bed was a mess. The desk was cluttered with unopened mail, old soda cans, and random junk. I searched quickly, half expecting to find another camera or a laptop full of recordings, but there was nothing obvious. I went back to my room and decided to set a trap. I hid the camera in my nightstand drawer under a pile of socks. If Tyler came looking for it, I'd know for sure it was him. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Then on the 3rd night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a faint sound, wood sliding against wood. It was coming from right next to me, from the nightstand. I opened my eyes just enough to see through the dim light. Tyler was standing in my room. He was bent over my drawer, rummaging through my socks, looking for the camera. My chest tightened. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I stayed perfectly still, pretending to sleep. Then he froze. Slowly, he turned his head toward my bed. He was looking right at me. For a second, I thought maybe he wasn't sure if I was awake. Then he spoke. "I know you're awake." Chills shot down my spine. I sat up, anger and fear colliding all at once. I demanded to know why he put a camera in my room. He just stared at me, then claimed it was because he thought I was stealing from him. I told him that was insane, that pointing a camera at my bed was beyond creepy. He tried to argue that I was overreacting, but I didn't buy it. I told him I was going to report him to the landlord, maybe even the police. I yanked open the drawer, grabbed the camera, and held it up in his face. "This is proof," I said, "and you're never getting it back." I stormed out, went into the kitchen, and threw the camera hard into the trash can. He stood in the hallway, fists clenched, staring at me with this blank, chilling expression. Then he turned and walked back into his room without saying a word. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with the TV on, jumping at every little sound. When the sun came up, I checked the garbage. The camera was gone. That was a week ago. I told the landlord, and he said he'd look into it. But so far, nothing's changed. Tyler still lives here. We don't speak, but the way he looks at me when we pass each other makes my skin crawl. Every night when I lie down, I wonder if there are more cameras hidden somewhere. I've searched my room top to bottom, but I can't shake the feeling I'm still being watched. Last night, I heard footsteps stop right outside my door. He stood there for minutes, not knocking, not moving, just standing. I'm looking for a new place to live, and I'm considering pressing charges. But until then, I sleep with my bedroom door locked, and I still cannot shake the thought that maybe there is a camera somewhere I haven't found yet. Story No. 4. My name is David, and this happened about 2 years ago when I moved to Seattle for work. Rent was expensive, so I went looking for a cheap room to rent. I found a listing on Craigslist that seemed too good to be true, a private bedroom for half the price of anywhere else. The guy renting it out, Kyle, sounded normal enough over the phone. When I went to see the place, Kyle opened the door. He was in his early 30s, kind of quiet but polite. The apartment was small, a little old, but clean. I took the room on the spot and moved in a few days later. At first, everything was fine. Kyle mostly kept to himself. We exchanged small talk in the kitchen, nothing weird, but about 2 weeks in, I came home from work one night and noticed my closet door was open. I knew I'd shut it that morning. I brushed it off as me being forgetful. Then, a few days later, my laptop was sitting at a different angle on my desk, like someone had touched it. I started feeling uneasy. One night, after turning off the lights, I noticed a faint blinking red light in the corner of the room. I got up, thinking maybe it was a smoke detector, but when I got closer, my stomach dropped. It was a tiny wireless camera, carefully hidden behind a stack of books. I felt sick. Someone had been watching me in my room. I carefully took the camera down and hid it in my desk drawer. The next night, I pretended everything was normal. I stayed up late in bed with my eyes half open. Around 3 a.m., I heard my bedroom door slowly creak open. Kyle stepped in quietly. In his hand was a small remote control. He went straight to the desk drawer and opened it. I sat up suddenly and said, "What are you doing?" He froze, then turned and smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "You weren't supposed to find that," he said. My heart was pounding. I asked him why there was a camera in my room. His answer made my skin crawl. "I just wanted to make sure you were safe. I like knowing where you are." I didn't believe him. The camera was pointed directly at my bed. There was nothing safe about it. The next morning, I planned to call the police. But when I came home from work that night, my room had been completely torn apart. Closet open, drawers dumped out, mattress moved, like someone had been searching for something. That night, I searched the entire apartment. I found another camera hidden in the kitchen smoke detector and one inside the air vent in the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I packed a bag. I decided I would leave in the morning. But around midnight, as I was about to step out with my suitcase, I saw Kyle standing in the living room. He was holding a baseball bat. His face was completely blank. "You're not going anywhere," he said quietly. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and called 911 with shaking hands. For 10 minutes, I heard him pacing outside my door, tapping the bat against the wall. It felt like forever before I finally heard the sound of sirens. The police came in and restrained him. When they searched his room, they found multiple hard drives filled with recordings, not just of me, but of past tenants. He had been doing this for years. I moved out that night and never went back. Even now, I check every room I stay in for hidden cameras. Every tiny blinking light makes my heart race. And sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I swear I can still hear the sound of that door slowly creaking open. Story No. 5. Last summer, I booked a week-long stay at an Airbnb cabin in the mountains of Colorado. I'd been going through a rough breakup and just wanted to get away from everyone. The cabin was beautiful. Cozy wood interior, stone fireplace, and big windows looking out over the forest. The owner, a man named Richard, met me when I arrived. He was friendly, but a little too chatty, telling me about the wildlife in the area, how no one lived nearby, how cell service could be spotty. The first 2 nights were peaceful. I spent my mornings hiking and my evenings reading by the fire, but on the 3rd night something felt wrong. As I was about to go to bed, I noticed a strange ticking sound coming from the smoke detector above the bed. It wasn't the usual battery chirp. It was softer, rhythmic, almost mechanical. I grabbed a chair and climbed up to look closer. When I twisted the cover off, my blood ran cold. Inside, behind the smoke detector's normal parts, was a small black lens, a camera pointed straight down at the bed. I immediately felt like I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I put the cover back on, trying to make it look untouched. I didn't want whoever put it there to know I'd found it. My first thought was to grab my bag and leave, but it was past midnight. The cabin was isolated, and the nearest town was almost 30 minutes down a pitch-black mountain road. I tried to sleep on the couch with all the lights on, but every sound outside made me jump. At 3 a.m., I heard gravel crunching outside, slow footsteps circling the cabin. My heart was hammering. Then I heard the faint creak of the front porch boards. Whoever it was stopped right outside the door. I didn't move, just stared at the door, holding my phone in one hand. After a few seconds, I heard the sound of keys, then the soft click of the front door unlocking. The door opened an inch, then two. I bolted. I ran to the back door, flung it open, and sprinted into the dark forest barefoot. I didn't stop until I couldn't see the cabin lights anymore. I crouched behind a fallen tree, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone as I called 911. I stayed there until I saw flashing lights bouncing through the trees. When the deputies arrived, they found Richard inside the cabin. He claimed he had just come to check if everything was okay, but when they searched the place, they found multiple hidden cameras. In the bedroom, the bathroom, even behind the vents. They also found a computer in his truck with live feeds still running. There were files labeled with names and dates going back years. I never went back to that cabin to get my stuff. The sheriff's office mailed it to me. Even now, I can't stay in an Airbnb or hotel without tearing apart every smoke detector, every vent, every clock. And sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I can almost hear those slow footsteps circling the cabin again. Story No. 6. It was late September when I finally moved into my new apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a one-bedroom unit in an older building that had clearly seen better days. The rent was cheap, and that's what I cared about most. I was working nights at a warehouse, so I really just needed a place to sleep during the day. The landlord was an older guy, friendly enough, but something about the way he smiled when he handed me the keys felt too friendly. The first few days were normal. I unpacked, settled in, got used to the faint hum of the pipes in the walls. I was usually exhausted when I got home, so I barely had energy to do more than collapse on the couch. But on my third night there, I noticed something strange. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard a soft click sound, like a camera shutter. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe a neighbor's phone or TV. But then it happened again. Click. And this time I swear it came from inside my apartment. I sat up, heart pounding. The room was quiet. I turned on the light and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. Maybe it was just the pipes making weird noises. I tried to shake it off and went back to bed. The next day, I started noticing small things. My toothbrush was slightly out of place. My kitchen towel was hanging on the other side of the counter. And once, I came home to find my front door unlocked. I told myself I must have been careless, but deep down I knew I had locked it that morning. By the end of the week, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The clicking sounds happened almost every night, always when I was in bed or just getting out of the shower. I started staying up late, turning off all the lights and sitting quietly, just listening. That's when I saw it. One night, as I was pretending to sleep, I heard the sound again. Click. My eyes slowly scanned the room until they landed on the smoke detector above my bed. There was a tiny red light glowing on it, a light I hadn't noticed before. My stomach dropped. The next morning, I got a chair and took the smoke detector down. It was heavier than I expected. When I opened it, my hands went cold. Inside was a small hidden camera with a memory card. I wanted to throw up. Someone had been watching me, sleeping, changing clothes, showering. I called the police immediately. They came, took the device, and asked me questions for hours. Turns out I wasn't the first tenant to complain. There had been reports before, but no solid proof until now. But here's where it gets worse. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Around 3 a.m., I heard the faint sound of my doorknob turning. I froze. Slowly, I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed and crept toward the living room. The door opened. A man stepped inside. It was my landlord. When he saw me standing there, he froze too. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Then he turned and bolted out the door. I called the police again, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. They caught him an hour later, hiding in the basement. When they searched his apartment, they found multiple hidden cameras, hard drives, and hundreds of videos of former tenants. The police told me later that some of the videos dated back almost 10 years. I moved out the next morning. Even now, in my new place, I can't sleep without checking every smoke detector, every vent, every corner of the room. Sometimes late at night, I swear I still hear that faint click. And when I do, I turn on every light in the house, because I know someone, somewhere, might still be watching. Story No. 7. I work as a travel nurse, which means I move around a lot, staying in temporary housing or short-term rentals. Last winter, I took an assignment in a small town 2 states away and booked a fully furnished rental apartment online. It looked cozy in the pictures, clean, modern, perfect for 3 months. The first night was uneventful. I unpacked, made some tea, and relaxed on the couch. But by the second night, I started feeling uneasy. There was this strange hum in the apartment. Not loud enough to be distracting, but just enough to notice when everything else was quiet. I tried unplugging things on the fridge, the microwave, but the hum never went away. One morning, after coming home from a long night shift, I went straight to the shower. As soon as I stepped out, dripping wet, I felt this presence, like someone was watching me. I wrapped the towel tighter around myself and scanned the bathroom. Nothing. But something about the mirror above the sink felt wrong. When I leaned closer, I noticed the tiniest pinhole in the top corner of the frame. It was almost invisible, but not to me. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shone it at the hole. There was a tiny reflection, the glass of a lens. My stomach flipped. I ripped the mirror off the wall. Behind it was a small, battery-operated camera with a cable running into the drywall. At first, I thought maybe this was some weird security system. But when I called the property manager, he sounded genuinely surprised and nervous. He told me to pack my things and promised to send someone to check. That night, I booked a hotel room, but I had to go back to the apartment to grab the rest of my stuff. I got there just before midnight. The place felt different, like someone had been there since I left. My suitcase had been moved. The curtains were drawn shut, even though I'd left them open. When I went into the bedroom, I froze. On the bed, sitting neatly on top of my folded clothes, was a small flash drive. I didn't put it there. I didn't even own it. Against my better judgment, I took it with me to the hotel and plugged it into my laptop. There were dozens of video files, all of me, sleeping, eating, showering. The earliest file was from the very first night I stayed there. The latest file? It was from that same evening, just hours earlier, showing me leaving the apartment with my suitcase. Someone had been there, filming me until the moment I walked out. I called the police. They searched the apartment and found not just the bathroom camera, but 2 more. One in the smoke detector in the living room, and one hidden inside the alarm clock on the nightstand. But here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. The police said the cameras weren't connected to Wi-Fi. They were motion activated, saving everything locally, which meant whoever was recording had to physically come inside the apartment to collect the footage. They never found out who it was. The property owner swore he had no idea. The property manager disappeared the next week. And me? I never stayed in another rental again. Now, no matter where I go, the first thing I do is check every mirror, every smoke detector, every vent, because someone somewhere might be waiting for the next person to move in. Story No. 8. Last summer, I took a weekend trip with 3 friends to celebrate finishing our final semester at college. We booked a small cabin in the mountains. It was cheap, cozy, and about an hour away from town. The listing said it was off the grid, no Wi-Fi, no cell service. Perfect for a digital detox. The first day was amazing. We cooked on the grill, played cards, told scary stories by the fire. It felt good to be completely cut off from the world. But that night, things got strange. Around 2 a.m., we were all asleep when a loud thump woke us up. It sounded like something heavy falling inside the cabin. We checked every room but found nothing out of place. We chalked it up to the wind and went back to bed. The next morning, we found a small memory card on the porch. None of us owned a camera, so we were confused about where it came from. My friend had a laptop in his bag, so we decided to check what was on it. There were 10 video files. The first 9 were random, shots of the forest, the creek outside, the road leading to the cabin, but the last one made my blood run cold. It was footage of us, sleeping, in our beds, filmed from inside the cabin. The angle was high, almost like it was shot from the corner of the ceiling. We freaked out. Someone had been inside the cabin last night, watching us, recording us. We tore the place apart, looking for cameras. That is when we found it. A tiny pinhole camera inside the wooden wall panel above the living room. It was connected to a wireless transmitter hidden under the floorboards. We packed our bags immediately. But as we stepped outside, we realized there were fresh footprints in the dirt leading away from the cabin and stopping just a few feet into the woods. It looked like someone had been standing there watching the cabin for hours. We jumped in the car and drove down the mountain as fast as we could. Halfway to town, we got cell service again. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a notification for a new airdrop request. The sender's name was just 3 words. "Look behind you." We screamed and swerved off the road, looking everywhere, but there was no one in the back seat. When we finally made it to a gas station, we checked the airdrop file. It was a single photo, a picture of us, taken that morning, as we were sitting on the porch, eating breakfast. Whoever it was hadn't just been watching us last night. They had been watching us the entire trip. We reported everything to the police, but they never found anyone. The cabin owner swore they had no cameras installed and had never seen the memory card we found. To this day, none of us knows who was in those woods, or how they were close enough to send us that photo without us ever hearing a sound. Story No. 9. I work as a junior editor at a small media company. Most days, I am the last one to leave the office because deadlines are tight and someone always has to finish the uploads. Our office is on the top floor of an old building downtown, the kind with flickering lights and long empty hallways after hours. One Friday night, everyone had already left by 8 p.m., and I was alone finishing my last batch of edits. Around 9, I went to the break room to grab some water. That's when I noticed the coffee machine's small red light blinking, as if someone had just used it. I didn't think much of it. Maybe a coworker left it on. But as I headed back to my desk, I caught something on the reflection of the glass wall. A faint green light in the ceiling vent above my workstation. I froze. I climbed onto my chair and shone my phone flashlight into the vent. My breath caught in my throat. There was a small camera tucked inside, pointed directly at my desk. I reported it to HR first thing Monday morning. They told me it was probably an old security measure and they'd look into it. But they seemed weirdly nervous, like they didn't want me to dig deeper. That week, I started noticing little things. My computer mouse was slightly moved in the morning, even though I always put it in the middle of the mat. My personal notebook was shifted just enough that I knew someone had flipped through it. And twice I found my desk drawer unlocked, even though I keep it locked every night. One night I decided to test something. I left a note inside my drawer that said, "I know you're watching." The next morning, the note was gone. No one said a word about it. That night I stayed late again, this time on purpose. I turned off all the lights except the one at my desk and pretended to work. Around 11:30 I heard faint footsteps in the hallway. I slowly hid under my desk, phone camera recording, peeking through the chair legs. The footsteps stopped just outside my office door, and then I saw him. A man in a dark hoodie, face hidden, carrying a small device. He walked straight to the vent, removed the hidden camera and replaced it with a new one. I stayed completely still, heart pounding so loud I was afraid he'd hear it. Before leaving, he bent down right in front of my desk and whispered, almost like he knew I was there, "Smile for me next time." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I quit my job. I turned the video over to the police, but they never caught the guy. HR refused to answer any questions about why there were cameras in the ceiling. Even now, in my new office, I keep glancing up at the vents, wondering if someone is still watching. Story No. 10. When I first moved into my new apartment, it felt like a fresh start. A small one-bedroom on the 3rd floor, quiet neighborhood, affordable rent, almost too affordable. The landlord was an older man, soft-spoken, who just handed me the keys and barely stayed 5 minutes before leaving. The first week was uneventful. I worked long hours, came home, ate, and slept. But after a few days, I began noticing little things, small enough to dismiss at first. One morning, I found my toothbrush lying flat on the sink instead of standing in the cup where I always left it. Another night, my living room curtain was slightly open, even though I'd shut it tight before going to bed. Then came the night that changed everything. It was just past 2:30 a.m. I woke up suddenly, no reason why, until I heard it. A soft, almost delicate click sound, like a camera shutter. I froze, listening, every muscle in my body tense. Nothing. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it slowly across the room. Everything looked normal. My heart was racing, but eventually I convinced myself it must have been a pipe or the fridge kicking on. The next night, it happened again. This time I stayed perfectly still, pretending to be asleep. My eyes darted around the room, searching for where the sound came from. And that S when I saw it. A tiny red dot glowing faintly on the smoke detector above my bed. The moment morning came, I got a chair and took the detector down. My stomach dropped. Inside wasn't just a smoke alarm. It was a camera. A hidden camera. I felt sick. Someone had been watching me. I called the police immediately. They took the device and said they'd look into it. But they didn't seem in a hurry. I couldn't stay there another night. I packed a bag and checked into a cheap motel across town. I thought I'd be safe there. But the next evening, when I returned to the apartment to grab more clothes, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A small USB drive was sitting neatly in the middle of my kitchen counter. I hadn't left it there. Hands shaking, I plugged it into my laptop. There were dozens of video files. The first few showed me doing normal, everyday things, eating dinner, brushing my teeth, sleeping. The footage was from strange angles. The corner of the living room, the kitchen cabinet, the ceiling of my bedroom. Then the videos got more recent. The second to last clip was from just the night before, footage of me asleep in the motel room I had checked into. I stared at the screen, feeling my throat close. Whoever had been watching me here was still watching me, following me. My pulse was hammering in my ears when I saw the last file. It was named in all caps, "Look behind you." For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the name of the file, my hand frozen over the trackpad. And then, from somewhere deep in the apartment, I heard the sound again, click. I dropped the laptop and ran. I didn't even look behind me. I stayed at a friend's place that night, shaking the whole time. The next morning, I brought the laptop to the police, showed them everything. They promised they'd investigate. But when we returned to the apartment together, everything was gone. The USB, my laptop, even the smoke detector, gone. No fingerprints, no sign of forced entry. The police filed a report, but they had nothing to go on. I never went back. I left everything behind. Furniture, clothes, dishes. The thought of stepping foot inside that place again made me feel like I couldn't breathe. Even now, months later, I still don't feel safe. I've moved twice since then. Every night, I check every corner, every vent, every smoke detector. And still sometimes, in the middle of the night when everything is silent, I swear I can hear it, that soft, unmistakable click. Story No. 11. I work nights as a rideshare driver. It was around 4 a.m. when I finally got home, exhausted. My small apartment was quiet, and I was looking forward to crashing straight into bed. But as I opened the door, something felt off. My living room light was on. I never leave it on. I slowly stepped inside, checking every room with my phone flashlight. Everything looked normal, but my gut told me something wasn't right. I decided to check my security camera, just a cheap Wi-Fi camera I had set up facing my front door. When I opened the app, my stomach dropped. There were dozens of new recordings from the past 2 nights. Each clip showed the same thing: someone unlocking my door and walking inside while I was out working. The person wore gloves and a hood, face never visible. They'd walk around slowly, almost casually, sometimes standing in the hallway, just staring at my bedroom door for minutes at a time. I couldn't breathe. I called the police immediately. They came, checked the apartment, but found nothing stolen. They said it was probably a burglar casing the place and told me to stay somewhere else for a few nights. I booked a motel across town and tried to forget about it, but on the 3rd night, I woke up suddenly, feeling like someone was in the room with me. The air felt heavy. I sat up and looked around. The motel room was dark except for the tiny green light of the TV, and that's when I saw it, a faint red light glowing from the smoke detector. Heart pounding, I stood on the bed, unscrewed the cover, and there it was. A small hidden camera pointed directly at the bed. I yanked it out, grabbed my things, and ran straight to my car. When I got back to the apartment, I noticed something waiting on my kitchen table, a small envelope. Inside was a flash drive. Hands shaking, I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file. It was a video of me, sleeping in the motel room just an hour ago. The camera angle was different, lower, as if someone had been standing just a few feet away, holding the camera in their hands. The video ended with a slow zoom on my face as I slept. Then, a whisper. "See you at home." I didn't even finish packing my things, I just left. I don't live there anymore, I don't use motels, I don't stay anywhere without tearing the place apart first, checking every vent, every clock, every smoke detector. But sometimes when I'm driving late at night, I feel it. That prickle on the back of my neck, like someone is in the back seat silently watching,